welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In continuation with the series on religion and society, we are going to talk about myths and rituals in the Parsi Zoroastrian community. Now, to recap, we are following the syllabus of the course Religion and Society, taught to be a multidisciplinary course, second semester. And this reading by Cyrus Ponboyne is prescribed in the syllabus. So, rituals are an important component of religion, and a lot of sociological anthropological work are done around rituals to understand not only the belief practices but also to understand the way religion help us to understand the social structure, the economy and social transformation taking place. Today we are going to talk about the Parsi Zoroastrian myth and rituals, some problems of their relevance for death and dying. And in the first part of the lecture, we saw how these rituals have been a part of the Zoroastrian community. We looked into the historical evolution, the mythological aspect, and try to understand the continuity of these rituals despite the transformations and changes taking place. So, let us continue understanding the myths and rituals around death and dying. So, rituals provide a structured way for the community to acknowledge this loss and eventually fill the hole by redistributing the deceased role and responsibilities to others. Cyrus Pangboyne notes that death produces intense anxiety. Sociologists argue that this anxiety is contagious and can lead to social chaos if not channeled. Rituals transform a passive, terrifying event into an active, disciplined process. This prevents the demon of corruption, that is, the chaos of death, from overwhelming the survivor's mental and social stability. So, here we are going to look into how Pangboyne looks into the rites for the dead. So, the final phase of the ritual process highlights the transition from spiritual preparation to the physical management of contagion. As Pangboyne notes, the focus shifts towards isolating the impurity of the corpse while reaffirming the identity of the deceased as a Zoroastrian. Here is a breakdown of the specific rituals of protection described. The first is pre-death protection. The Ohana Varya is the term used, and before the body becomes a source of pollution, that is the dead body, the focus is on the power of sound and intent. Once death occurs, the body is considered contagious, that is, it is going to spread pollution. To prevent this pollution from spreading to the community, there are rituals performed, and one of the important thing is that only professional bearers, often called Nasi Salas, may touch the body. So, everybody is not allowed to touch the body of the dead, and therefore, there is a line drawn between the professional boundary and the body bearers. So, you touching it could spread bound, but until and unless it is by a professional bearer. The use of consecrated bull urine, that is gourmets, is central albeit unusual to outsider, and this feature in the Videvat law. It is used as a ritual detergent to neutralize the nasus, that is the demon of corruption, before the bearer washes with water. Then comes the question of cleansing and purifying, and the bearer water cleaned white clothing symbolize purity in the face of death darkness. So, the Sachkar ceremony is the final dressing of the deceased. It is a moment of great fortune where the body is reclaimed as a member of the faith one last time. And how, what are the process involved? It is Sudre and Kusti. The deceased is dressed in the sacred undershirt and woven girdle. They are the armors of a Zoroastrian. Even in death, the individual is presented as a soldier of the Ahura Mazda. Then comes the next process, which is Sagdid, or the gaze of the dog. the metallic circle by drawing 3 circles around the body with a nail or a metal instrument. The bearers create a kash or a spiritual boundary. This is intended to lock the pollution within the small space and prevent it from affecting the living survivors in the room. The ceremony of the Sagdid or the dog viewing is one of the most distinctive elements of the Parsi funeral. The four-eyed dog, which is ideally the dog has 2 spots above its eyes. Ancient myths suggest such a dog has a spiritual sight to see demon of corruption and drive it away with its gaze. So, the modern Parsis like the Rustamji often provide a pragmatic explanation of the four-eyed dog, and the dog's senses can detect. If a person is in deep coma or truly dead, ensuring no one is exposed while still alive, this is not one-time event. It is repeated at the start of every Gah, that is the 5 division of the Zoroastrian day, until the body is removed to the dagma, that is the external exposure of the dead body. Here, Pongboin gives us a mapping of the ritual elements and the symbolic functions. So, the first ritual element is the Ahuna Varya, which means prayer, and the practical function of this is spiritual armor for the soul's departure. The second ritual element is Gomez, which is the bull urine. The symbolic function of this is ritual disinfectant against the demon of corruption. The third ritual element is the metallic circle, which is drawn around the dead body, and it functions to kind of create a boundary between the dead and the others, that is a spiritual containment of pollution. And the fourth ritual element is the Sagdid or the dog's gaze, and the symbolic function is warding off evil and confirming biological death. Next, Pangborn analyzes the gap between the physical disposal of the body and the metaphysical journey of the soul. So, there is a kind of he talks about the power of the fire and the gathas. Parsi rituals are sophisticated technology designed to manage the simultaneous decomposition of the physical form and the liberation of the spiritual body. While the body is still in the bangli, which is the ritual play hall, fire, the supreme symbol of the asha, which is truth order, is introduced. There is a vigil, that is the fire fed by sandalwood, act as a barrier against the darkness and the nasus, which means pollution. The Gesarna, which is the central ritual, involves 2 priests reciting the gathas, and gatha means the hymns of the Zoroaster. This is the spiritual peak of the ceremony, occurring just as the body is placed on the iron bier. The iron is significant because according to Videvat, metal does not observe contagion as porous material like wood do. Pangborn notes the constant use of the paivand, a cloth link held between 2 people, while often explained as a symbol of sympathy. Pangborn argues its true function is spiritual insulation. In Zoroastrianism, a single person is more vulnerable to demonic influence. By being joined in pairs by a cloth or a tape, participants create a circuit of shared spiritual energy and protection. Pangborn quotes John G. Rode to emphasize that for Parsis, physical pollution is equal to moral sin. Touching a corpse without ritual protection is spiritually damaging as committing a wicked act. The transition to the Tower of Silence is not merely a green burial alternative, it is a rapid ritualized separation. The sun is considered a great purifier. Exposure to the sun and vulture is intended to strip the flesh quickly, preventing long-term putrefaction that would poison the earth. So, in all the rituals or the acts which is being part of the death funeral ceremony are basically intended to retain the sacredness of the earth and to kind of contain the pollution within the spiritual and the boundary, and all rituals are to kind of transfer the pollution into a purity. So, this crucial distinction, the carp is the ethereal form of the deceased. The action of the vulture and the sun helps the soul unnest from the physical body. And therefore, a lot of rituals are performed towards the end of the 3 nights, which is on the 4th day. For the Zoroastrian community, it signifies the soul's departure. So, the ritual do not end when the body is left in the tower. The first 3 nights are the most perilous. The Uttama ceremony, which is the 4th morning, and the nightly Afringan prayers are specifically designed to strengthen the angel's Srosha. The angel acts as a divine bodyguard, shielding the soul from demons until it is ready to cross the Chivnath bridge. Once the 3 days pass, the soul and its carp are believed to rise from the earth, leaving behind the house of clay for a new location in God's unbounded universe. Next, Pangboin talks about the cultus as a survival mechanism. His works demonstrate that the Parsi cultus is a survival mechanism. It manages the intense anxiety of death by transforming a terrifying event, the presence of a corpse, into a highly controlled rhythm process of purification. Though modern life has pruned the mythology, the underlying fear that death is an attack by destructive spirit on a good creation remains the driving force behind these enduring ancient practices. So, people have become brought in a lot of rationality, and therefore, they do not believe in the idea that death implies the coming in of pollution or coming of the evil. But despite that, there are a lot of mythology, myths which are associated with the death and the dying continues during the modern times. So, Pangboin then talks about the distinction between the spatial and the social boundary. He focuses on the meticulous geometry of rituals and the long-term relationship between the living and the dead. It reinforces the idea that Zoroastrianism views death not as a single event, but as a state of emergency that requires constant specific action to resolve. He highlights how physical space is managed to prevent the spread of evil. The corpse head must never point north. In Zoroastrian cosmology, the north is the source of all dangers and evils. While non-Zoroastrian, that is the Judeans, may view the body early on, they are strictly excluded after the purification bath. This is not out of malice, but to prevent the vitation of the spiritual protection surrounding the community. The use of Avastin and the Palvi is non-negotiable. Even if the priest does not fully understand the translation, the sound and vibration of the ancient tongue are believed to hold mystic attraction and convincing efficacy. Then Pangboin talks about the decontamination of the material world. The Videva treats pollution like a physical substance that soaks into material. The cleaning requirement vary based on porosity. And here Pangboin talks about the material required in the act of purification. The first material is gold, and one washing with gummies and water, the outcome is that it is salvaged. The second material is stone, which requires 6 washing, and the outcome is again salvage. The third is porcelain, wood and clay, where there is no cleaning requirement. It is unsalvageable. These must be discarded because they observed the death impurity too deeply. So, metal and stones are kind of more considered as purifying and can achieve salvation. Then he talks about the 3-day vigil, which is kind of a period used for nourishing the soul of the dead. For the first 3 days, the family enters a state of restricted living, and they follow a lot of prohibitions and rituals. One of them is abstinence, that is abstinence from non-vegetarian food, and no cooking occurs in the house of death. This reflects a world temporarily out of balance, because it is believed that there is pollution, so, and it is contagious. So, therefore, a lot of pollution spreads through the food and cooking in the kitchen, and the abstinence from cooking for the 3 days. The Uthama, which is the 3rd day, is the threshold ceremony. It marks the transition of the soul from earth towards the Chinvat bridge. A key modern feature is the announcement of charitable donation in the name of the deceased, reinforcing the Zoroastrian ideal that good deeds are the soul's true currency. So, the belief is that if this kind of good deeds are done, then the transition of the soul into the heaven would be easier, and therefore there is donation. Then he talks about the cherubim, which is the 4th day, and the heavenly hierarchy. Before dawn on the 4th day, the most complex set of prayers, the cherubim, is the performed. It addresses a specific legal team of angels. The first is the Rashnu and the Asta. These are the judges who will weigh the soul. The second is Ram Kavastra, the angel of the rarefied air, who helps the soul ascend. The third is Adravas, they are the collective spirits of all departed souls. And the fourth is the Sarosha, which is the final thank you for his 3-day protection. Then he shifts to the understanding of the eternal contract or the reciprocity. The rituals eventually transitions into a cycle of remembrance, 10th day, 30th day, monthly and annual. Pangboin describes this as a mutually rewarding arrangement. The first is the soul of peace. The deceased is pleased by the righteous and the remembrance of their descendant. Then second is the living protection. In return, the ancestor provides an invisible helping hand to the family, and that is why so much of significance is paid to the performance of the death rituals in a kind of a systematic and according to the traditional belief, because there is a reciprocity involved. The better it is performed, then it is believed that the dead ancestor would kind of protect the family of the living. And then he traces the historical roots of survival anxiety. Pangboin's transition from the ritual management of death to the sociological death of an entire community. He points at a tragic irony. The same conservative mechanism that preserved Zoroastrianism through centuries of persecution are now struggling to address a modern internal demographic crisis. The Parsi's collective identity is forged in the memory of the flight and light. And the Kisse-e-Sanjan, that is, this is AD 1600 poem, acts as a national epic for the Indian Parsis. It codifies the trauma of the 7th century Muslim conquest and the subsequent migration to Gujarat, that is India. Whether or not every date is historically precise, the emotional truth of being a persecuted remnant is central to their psyche. Then the third is the cycle of jeopardy. After finding asylum in India, the community faced renewed threat during the Muslim expansion into Gujarat, that is 14th, 15th century, reinforcing the idea that survival is never guaranteed. And then Pangboin talks about the modern crisis, that is a racial suicide. So while external persecution has vanished, the community now faces what Pangboin calls the latest strategy of the prince of demon, that is internal demographic collapse. Pangboin identifies a syndrome of the interrelated factors causing this decline. And here he kind of does a mapping of the factors that has led to the decline of the Zoroastrian community. Number one factor is the economic shift. Decline from the heights of the British era entrepreneurship, and the result is postponement of marriage and family building. The second factor is endogamy. Endogamy is strict rule of only marrying within the faith, and the outcome is, because there was a marriage within the community, it led to a shrinking marriage pool, leading to more bachelors and spinsters. The third is exogamy. It led to youth choosing non-Parsi mates, often leads to exclusion from the community, especially for women. And the fourth factor that he discusses is the biological issue. High incidence of genetically transmitted vulnerability. The result is deterioration of the general community health. And he goes into kind of talking about the statistics of decline. The most startling revelation in Pangborn's analysis is the sheer mathematical reality of Parsi's population in India, particularly its hub where there is the majority of the people are found, that is Bombay. In Mumbai, the death rate is approximately 50% higher than the birth rate. While India's general population has historically boomed, the Parsis population has seen a steady downward trajectory. In the mid 20th century, the Parsi population in India was roughly 114,000, which is according to the 1941 census. So, therefore, we see that there is a consistent decline in the community that is also the cause of anxiety. And then the other debate is on the conflict of reform. By early 21st century, the number had plummeted to approximately 69,000, that is 2001 census, and has continued to drop, with some estimates placing the current Indian Parsi population at under 50,000. So, the threat of demise has split the community into two camps. The first camp is the orthodox. They believe that survival depends on maintaining the purity of the bloodline and strict adherence to the Vidya, which is the scriptural text. The orthodox fear that diluting the community through conversion or intermarriage would be a final blow, that is, it would kind of wipe off the community. The reformers argue that the rules of endogamy are very things strangling the community. The reformers see the refusal to accept children of intermarried Parsis, particularly women, as a form of self-inflicted extinction. Pangborn concludes that while Zoroastrian has an incredible technology for saving the individual soul via Sarosha and the funerary rites, his cultus is currently falling to save the corporate body. And therefore, he kind of provides a certain solution and does a comparison of the proposed solution. The first issue that he talks about is the primary scriptures. The orthodox believe that the full Avesta and the Palvi text is the solution. The reformers believe the Gathas, the original hymns, could provide solution. The second issue is marriage. Orthodox favor strict endogamy, that is to kind of marry within the community, whereas the reformer, they say that there should be tolerance of exogamy, especially where women are marrying outside the Parsi community. The third issue is of liturgy, and they talk about sacred Avestan, that is rote recitation, whereas the reformers, they are in favor of vernacular, that is translation for meaning. Then they talk about the membership, where the orthodox are saying that it should be hereditary, born of two Parsi parents should only be allowed membership. The reformers are articulating that the membership should be open to conversion, intermarried children as well. And the last issue is the concept of death, where the orthodox, they talk about ritual management of pollution, whereas the reformer, they are in favor of moral and hygienic separation. So, basically if we talk about the conflict between the orthodox and the reformer, it is a kind of a debate between the symbol versus science. Pagbon says that many Parsis, the Sudro and the Kusti, represents a fortifying power that needs no scientific validation. To the orthodox, these garments are the fort that protect the soul. To the reformer, the fort has become a prison that prevents the community from growing. The resolution of these conflicts remains the great questions of the Parsis' future. Can religion survive without rigid, hereditary and ritualistic framework of the Videvat, or is the very framework the only thing that has kept them distinct from 3000 years? And that is why we look into rituals as living bread. Pangborn acknowledges that for centuries the Zoroastrian system of myth and rituals has functionally effective. It provides number one, meaning. It rescues life from banality by framing human existence within a cosmic struggle. Secondly, it provides hope. It transmutes the terror of death into a manageable process of transition and renewal. Third, it provides assurance. The time honored forms provide a psychological shield, matching the fear and trembling of mortal experience with specific rhythmic actions. So, we have kind of talked about the death funeral rituals, the mythology, the process, and we have also talked about the modern conflict between the orthodox and the reformers' idea about the falling demographic numbers. And therefore, to come to the conclusion, a profound disagreement of the cause and cure of Parsi's decline. The establishment, that is the orthodox, view the modernity and infidelity as the killer. To them, community is dying because people have abandoned the rituals and purity role. The solution is more rigid adherence to tradition, whereas the reformer view that the community is dying because of the lack of general reform. They do not necessarily deny the funeral rites are efficacious, but they believe the social restrictions like endogamy are the perils currently threatening their faith survival. He leaves the leader with a sense of anxiety of what is. With the ancient rituals are theoretically designed to protect the good creation, the most precarious creation of all, the living Parsi community, stands on the precipice of silenced statistical death. This kind of help us to understand Parsi Zoroastrian myths and rituals around death and dying. For reference, it is advised to read Pangborn Cyrus R. article published in 1991, Parsi Zoroastrian Myth and Ritual, Some Problems of the Relevance for Death and Dying. This is a chapter published in T. N. Madan's edited book, Religion in India, published by OUP, page number 415 to 430. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.